What is up, everybody? We are back. This is episode 10, I want to say. 10. We're moving. We're shaking and baking.
Sounds good.
Yeah, I'm here with Robyn. How you doing, Robyn?
Good. Actually, really good.
Good.
Probably better than I should be, given it's Super Bowl week and, we're not there. But I'm over it.
I think everybody's feeling that way because we're like, we should be there. Jesus, we should be there. And listen, I'm not mad at the season we had. I'm just mad the way it ended. But, I can't be mad with 13 wins and 3 losses. But I could be kind of upset that we're not in Arizona. So, yeah. So let's get it started. So in this episode, we're going to be discussing some things. And I don't know if anybody watched the Pro Bowl. I know Robyn didn't, but that's cool because I'm here.
Didn't.
Yeah.
I have to say the reason I didn't is I took a different tack this year because I was really, really in a state of like feeling like, oh, that we're not there.
Yeah.
And so I decided, you know what? I'm not going to watch a lot of the media hype. I'm not going to watch the Pro Bowl. I'm not going to watch any of that stuff. I kind of checked in, seeing what was going on, but I wasn't really engaged at all. And I did it, more as for a mental break, for me. I was dipping my toe into social media, kind of in and out, on Twitter this past week. I needed a break.
I do. I feel you. And I watched, but like I said, off camera, I was in and out. I just wanted to see the different format that they had. I mean, they had dodgeball. They had perfect catch, I want to say it was called.
That's one thing that I saw a little bit of in like Stefan Diggs on the trampoline. I'm like, get him off that thing.
Right. And the first one, he was in the water. So he was in the water. He caught two balls with his hand and the third one with his leg. So I'm like, all right, cool. Yeah, the trampoline, I don't know. And like I told you before, Myles Garrett, he hurt his toe. He dislocated his toe. So,
my husband is a retired ER doctor, so I can tell you from his experiences with trampolines, they tend to cause problems for people.
Yes.
And, grown adults especially.
Shouldn't be on trampolines. Sorry. Not doing it. But, again, I just wanted to watch for the different format. It was all right. Some players, the running back, Jacobs.
Oh, yeah.
He had some bad words to say about it. So, I mean, it's incentives. The guys, the Buffalo Bills, looked like they had a fun time. They were all gathered together. Jordan Poyer won for the swing of golf, which was pretty cool.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah.
It's good for families, like for in the Buffalo Bills, they take great pride in being a family-oriented organization. And so when the players go to the Pro Bowl, they're used to hanging out with each other.
Right.
They're used to that. And it's fun for them because they get to go usually either, Vegas, in this case, but someplace warm and, nice, and they have a good time. So
yeah, Mitch Morse was down there with his wife and his kids. So, and you've seen pictures of him. So like you said, yes, it's definitely family. Cause then they used to go to Disney World or Disneyland or something like that, right?
They've done that. They've done Hawaii for years. And
okay. I know one of them I knew. Okay.
Just hard to do, but
that's when Steve Tasker and them played. They went to Hawaii, right?
Yeah. That was they talk about it back in those years. It's like anybody, we got to go to Hawaii. How many of us are going to Hawaii this year?
No. If you're going to that, then you're definitely not going to the Super Bowl. And I do want to, I think this was, because the Pro Bowl was after the Super Bowl at one point, wasn't it?
It was.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I don't understand why they moved it.
Because nobody would watch it afterwards. Because after the Super Bowl, people are kind of done
with football. Yeah.
It sounds, horrendous to say and blasphemous to all of us who love football, but after the Super Bowl, it's nice to have a break.
No, for sure. Like, when we lost, it was like, you know how you got to decompress and you just don't want to watch anything. So it's just like, nah, I'm done. I don't really want to watch anything. If I do, it's just background noise, and I really don't care who wins. That's how I was actually. I'm not gonna lie. With the last 2 games, I didn't really care. I kind of care, but I didn't care. I just didn't want the person that's in there now. I didn't want to see them in there. So, and you could probably guess who that team is, but I'm really tired of seeing that team, to be quite honest. But we can move on to some better news and some better topics. So, how do you see the Bills, Brandon Beane, keeping Jordan Poyer, Tremaine Edmonds, and Devin Singletary? Do you see a way? Or do you see you're just fine with letting them, 2 of them go?
Oof, this is like the most loaded question that it could be in years. I can be pretty decisive in what I'm thinking about Poyer. I love him.
Yeah.
I don't see any way that the Bills could fiscally responsibly keep him, because let's talk about where the Bills are at. And so the Bills are 19 as of right now, $19 million over the cap. So that means restructuring, that means letting people go, that means all
Yeah.
kinds of things.
And if you restructure Josh Allen for $20 million, right? And then that's $1 million under the books, you still have to restructure.
You still have Edmonds, you got issues.
Yeah.
So, and we knew this was coming. I mean, that's the one thing. It's not like anybody should be surprised that we're in this situation. It's actually a good situation to be in because you have good players that you have to pay. You just have to figure out who you can pay and who you can't afford to pay. And unfortunately, it's position oriented in terms of what's fiscally responsible to spend money on. For example, and we can sort of leapfrog, or I can, to Singletary here, because the running back position appears to be another position in this time period of the NFL not highly regarded fiscally as much as other positions. What I'm trying to say, basically is they don't pay running backs.
Nope.
And I don't see where they're going to pay Singletary unless, and it's possible, he takes a big hometown discount to stay. If he's willing to stay in Buffalo to play for a team that he loves, that he knows, all of that sort of thing, all of that will come at a price. He's gonna have to accept a lower salary than he might get on the market elsewhere. Now, getting back to Poyer, I don't really see any way that they can keep him, which tears at my heartstrings. However, it is a position issue. The safety position only garners so much, and Poyer is 32 years old, and you're going to have to move on at some point in time. And with all this stuff that happened with Damar Hamlin, and we'll talk about that in a minute, in terms of him playing or not playing, the safety position this off season is huge because Micah Hyde's getting older. So I don't see any way they keep Poyer.
But I think that's why they constructed their contracts the way they did, Micah Hyde and Jordan Poyer, to where it was a year off. So where they're not worried about 2 safeties at one time. But also, too, they got Christian Beffert back there. Is it Christian Beffert? Yes. That can switch to safety. So, I mean, they do have kind of relief. And then Damar Hamlin just came out and said the doctor said he's going to come out. He can still play, which is awesome.
It is.
But still, we still need, I think we need a vet safety. So hopefully, and I know money is an issue, we can get somebody for reasonable. I'm not going to say cheap because no one's cheap. But monkeying back on that Devin Singletary thing, I don't want Devin to take a discount because I think guys deserve to get their money.
Oh, I agree.
And I think Devin, I love Devin. Devin is my guy. They drafted him, and I just running backs is a dime a dozen, and I hate to say it that way, but you can get another Devin Singletary. So if Devin is on the market and someone out there is going to pay him, go.
Exactly, but I hope he stays.
I do too. I do
I
too.
I love him like
Yeah.
you do. He's an all out guy. He
He's a
gives
he's Mr. Reliable.
yes, and he gives you everything he's got.
Yep. Yeah.
Everything he's got. And I sort of feel bad. He's been in an offense that doesn't feature, the running back very much. But
Mm-hmm.
the other part of it is, and this is something we'll talk about a lot in the off season
Mm-hmm.
because I am on the rant about the status of our offensive line.
Yeah.
It's got to get better. It's got to get fixed. It's got to get better at making a consistent running game possible so that and protecting Josh.
Mm-hmm.
Toward the end of the season, our offensive line looked like dog doo doo.
It looked the last in the league. It did. And for Brandon Beane to go on his presser to say Josh can't get hit like that, and I'm pretty sure they understand it and they know they got to get some people. Like Roger Selfie wants to come back, and I'm like, I don't know if you're the answer. Spencer Brown, you got to get better, and maybe because of his back and he had surgery, maybe he wasn't 100%. Well, they'll never tell you that. But if you're not 100%, you're not helping Josh out there.
Yeah, and the other worrisome thing about Spencer Brown, and it sounds kind of counterintuitive in a way, but I wonder, and I'm certainly not an expert at this, but I've read where sometimes when you have really tall
Mm-hmm.
offensive linemen, that their leverage becomes an issue,
Yep.
in terms of being able to bend and all of that. So I don't know any of the particulars about that, but what I hope is during the off season, he does some work like Josh does with Jordan Palmer.
He was, and the crazy thing, and that's why I think it's more something is going on, because his last season, his first year, he was a stud.
He was.
And I'm like, what happened?
Well, there is something that happened, and he had a different offensive coordinator.
Yes, I keep forgetting about that too.
Yeah. So they changed, and you got to wonder, did Cromer, was he having more of a difficult time under Cromer's system?
And also too, he didn't practice the first few weeks of training camp too, because of the injury of his back. So
It bothered him.
Yeah.
We don't know, but
Right.
you're right. He's somebody you got your eyes on in terms of stepping up his game.
And they just someone left. I was strolling through somewhere. Oh, we'll see about it next week. So offensive lineman left, coach left. So
the safeties coach,
mm-hmm.
Tremaine Edmonds. Okay, I got to talk about Tremaine. I have to talk about Tremaine. Tremaine is the biggest question mark I have had, and I tried to think about this before we went on the air today. Has there ever been, because he was drafted in the first round, they moved up to get him the same year they drafted Josh.
Mm-hmm.
Have I ever had more of a mixed feeling or, feelings of uncertainty about a first round pick? I can't remember one. And it's because I don't know what they're going to do with Edmonds. I don't have any idea. I know one thing: he's worth a lot of money on the open market.
And they love him because the fact that Tremaine has done everything they have asked. Yes. As fans, we're like, why isn't he doing this? Why isn't he doing that? But he has done everything that they have asked him to do. We might not see it or understand it, but every time they speak about Tremaine, it's nothing but high praise
Mhm.
from him, from them. So
Mhm.
I think they find a way to keep Tremaine.
I really hope you're right. And the reason I think that they might is the same reason, because I had I had the same feeling about losing Milano when his
Mm.
contract came up. I was like, oh God, we
I thought
can't.
Milana was gone.
I was just I was convinced that we would there was no possible way that we would ever be able to re-sign him. And when it came out that he basically went to his agent and said, make it work in Buffalo, I was like, whoa,
Yeah.
because he didn't even test the market.
No.
And Milano could have got big
But
bucks.
yeah,
Big, big.
he can get once he get, because I can't remember what his contract is. They better do him right.
Oh
They
yeah.
better do him right. Because
Yeah. And
Milano, that's Batman and Robin. If you're gonna do Robin right, you better do Batman right.
yeah, that's a good way to put it. And I think Batman would do the same thing that Milano did, which
Mm-hmm.
was take a reasonable contract,
Right.
understanding that if the money all goes to you, then it comes away from other positions. And if you want to be a Super Bowl team, then everybody has to kind of spread the wealth.
But they could build that stuff up with bonuses and incentives, though.
Exactly, and they do that.
Yeah.
The cap. That's why they say the cap is a joke, because they
Right.
have all that stuff that goes with it. And thank God there are people that figure that out, like Greg from Cover One.
Oh, I know, right?
Oof,
I
I
don't
mean,
understand it. I look at that and I'm like, you guys are good because to me that looks like Chinese. Like I don't know what that is. What is this? How do you
well,
break that down?
well, yeah, and because there's every time you have a clause in here, there's a clause over there that does.
Right.
No, I'm just like, okay, you
Nope.
know that. But getting back to Edmonds, I do think there's a way. I hope there's a way. I think he would rather stay than
Mm-hmm.
go. And I'm hopeful that the Bills can find a way to make it happen, because if they can't, then he goes out on the market, and I think he could get a lot of
He
money,
can.
he could
Yeah.
get a lot of money. But I also think that's one of the factors that goes with this team,
Mm-hmm.
that they select players that are not necessarily, and I hate to use this word, but greedy, where I want all the money. I
Right.
don't care what anybody else gets. I want all the money.
You see
And
what happened to Diggs? They signed him quick, so there was no,
none of
no back and forth, no bickering, whatever. So
that.
yeah,
And you remember, because we remember the days when the Bills sucked and players, yeah, really the players were like, I'm not coming back there for less than blah, blah, blah. And
yep.
we had to overpay, you know,
Overpay,
way overpay,
way overpay. If I'm going
which
to go there, I'm going to get this. It's like,
exactly.
oh yeah, we're going to suck for
I
two
have
more years after
they have an
this.
attitude about being in Buffalo.
Hmm.
These guys don't have an attitude about being in Buffalo because they want to be in Buffalo.
But not even that, Robyn. He said, what is it, 8 months, 10 months, right? You can go. You can go on a plane. Like
The day after the Super Bowl.
you're working here. This is your job. Focus on what you need to do, and then
Right?
go. Like that's why I never understood. Oh, people don't want to play for Buffalo because there's nothing to do. You're playing football, bro.
Yeah. The other thing I always laugh about that in terms of there's nothing to do is like, wow.
Yeah.
Like I lived in Buffalo for 6 years in the city, and worked at Roswell Park. This was in the 70s and early 80s. But Western New York and the city of Buffalo, I had a great time. I was always out doing things. There's so much to
Yeah.
do.
But I mean, you're young, like you're coming into league 19, 20, 21.
That's how
And
old I was at the time.
I mean, it's a lot to do. You just have to, know people that know people. That's it. But what's your Tremaine thing? We need a safety. And his brother is a free agent.
Mm.
And he's in Pittsburgh. People were saying that Tremaine may go with his brother in Pittsburgh. I'm like, well, his brother's a free agent. So wouldn't it be nice if Tremaine said, hey, bro, we need a safety. come to Buffalo. I mean, I know it's vice versa too, but I would think Brandon Bean will be talking to Jermaine's brother.
You are so smart.
Well, thank you.
No, I'm serious. That's a brilliant. I mean, seriously, I hope they consider it. I'm sure, and I feel confident about this, and I can't say that I always felt this way, but I'm confident that Brandon Bean, he considers he looks under every rock.
Absolutely.
He,
Thank you for that article too. I read it and I was like, okay, thank you.
yeah,
They visit all these other colleges and stuff, and I'm like, all right, all
yeah,
right.
they do. And so if you go on our fanbase.com website, Dean Kindig, he follows all this stuff and he knows who Brandon Bean has looked at,
Right, right.
and who are the players that are most likely to fit Sean McDermott's system.
Mm-hmm.
So he does such an incredible job.
Yeah, you guys do an incredible job anyway.
Oh, well, thanks. They do all the work. I just try to help put it together in a, reasonable fashion, but they do all the work. And this off season, we're going to do some interesting stuff too. Kind of along the lines of what you and I are talking about in terms of, there's lots of issues that we can discuss that are related to the Bills,
Mm-hmm.
but in a more community related sense,
Okay.
that sort of thing. And, you and I've talked about that.
Oh yeah, for sure. For sure.
But we got stuff, girl. We got stuff to talk about.
We do. And speaking of stuff to talk about, were you done with the segment of Tremaine? And
I'm done.
Okay.
I want
so
back.
Speaking of community, so there was an article in the Buffalo News. More of a statement, I guess. I don't know. It was something that's tough enough for average fans when the season is over, but it's much tougher, much harder for season ticket holders when they make their plans for the weekend and soak up the whole day. So season ticket holders have a rough time than an average fan. I call bullshiggity. What are you doing? Like, were we trying to put fans against each other? What are we doing here? I know it's the off season. I get it, bro. I get it. But what are we doing here? Like, I'm an average fan. I don't go to games. I have anxiety, so I don't go. But I bring people over to my house, and a lot of people come over. I get a little anxiety there, but I was upset, okay? And I'm not a season ticket holder, okay? I was upset that the season abruptly just stopped. So take that, Buffalo News. How are you feeling about this darn article?
I'm just chuckling like heck because you wrote this down. For anybody listening, we have a couple of days before we record, we get a list going in terms of what we're going to talk about, and he put this out, and it was average fan versus season ticket holder, and I was like, what?
Yeah.
I had absolutely no idea because I didn't see the article. But what I will say is, yeah, it does make you wonder. It's like, why are you pitting, one part of the fan base against another? That doesn't even make any sense. There's a lot of other things you could write about.
Yeah.
That sort of thing. I mean, I'm not even sure I really understand what the point was.
But there's some people out there that think that if you don't go to a game, you're not a real fan.
Yeah, well, I got news for you. And when the new stadium gets built, there's going to be more of that discussion because the sport is not affordable for the average fan of Buffalo Bills. And that's always been an issue. That's why we almost lost the team, because the team could go to another city and make a whole lot more money.
Absolutely.
But thankfully to the Pagulas, who we'll talk about later, we,
that was a stressful time too.
So stressful.
Yeah, it was stressful.
But here's the thing, the new stadium that's coming is going to mean more of this fan versus that fan kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And I'm telling you what, I want to snuff that stuff right from the start.
Yeah.
Because you know, no offense to, anybody that had plans and you have to change your plans and all that sort of thing. But boo-hoo, you're blessed in my
Mm-hmm.
view. I grew up on the other side of the tracks. I
Right.
never got to go to games as a kid or anything like that. We couldn't afford to go. And yeah, you make those plans, but you make those plans understanding, well, what happens if they don't make it?
Right.
Okay, you have to understand that. That's part of the deal.
And everybody got upset when people were buying tickets for Atlanta. If we would have made it against Kansas City, they were like Bengals fans, other fan bases were upset. But that's what you do. You do that. That's nothing new. Like for them to make a big deal about it, it was like that's what you do.
Give me a
They
break.
do that.
That doesn't make any sense to me. And if we continue to see, that kind of discussion that doesn't make any sense to me like that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I mean, it just sounds elitist. It's like boo-hoo.
Right. It
You almost
does.
have to go to the game.
Right.
Consider
Right.
yourself lucky.
Yeah.
You know me with my little rants. I'll write up a rant, on the website because we don't need any of that crap.
No, we don't. We don't. Not at all.
So that's
Not
what
at
I have
all.
to say about that.
All right, let's move on to some happier times. So the Super Bowl is coming up, but let's back up. And I want to ask you, what was one of your favorite games this season?
From the Bills. Well, I would be, remiss if I didn't say it was Kansas City. We formed such a rivalry with them. They are our rival now, not the Patriots. We play the Patriots a couple times and it's not a big deal anymore.
Right.
It is a big deal to play Kansas City. So the Kansas City game was my favorite game because, of course, we won.
Mm-hmm.
And that was big to me. My least favorite game, because that was what you were going to also ask, so I'll
Yes.
just tell you right now, was that loss to the Dolphins early in the season.
Oh yeah.
And I'll tell you why, because I'll go on my little rant again. I don't ever, ever, ever want to see our team have to go out on a field and play when it's like 120 degrees heat index and have to play under those conditions. I don't want to ever see that again.
Yeah, that was some concerning there.
There was heat exhaustion happening. There was bad stuff going down by the end of that game.
Yeah.
And the players talked about it afterwards. And so, yeah, that was my least favorite game. And I don't ever want to see that happen again.
And you're sitting at home and you're watching that game and you're just looking and saying, is this a health issue? Mm-hmm. Like you're looking because Josh is just, you could just see everything is gone. Stephon Diggs is crawling to the side of on the sideline.
By the end of the game, Josh Allen he talked about how he felt. He had heat exhaustion.
Mm-hmm.
And no, that's not good.
But there's nothing you can do to prepare for that. You can't prepare for that weather, that game, that nothing.
Well, you could put the same kind of shade for the players over on that sideline, and it might help because you have a 20 whatever degree difference,
mm-hmm.
In terms of what they were experiencing. The Bills, 20 degrees more than what the Dolphins were experiencing. No.
Yeah.
Somebody's going to die on that field one of these days, and we're all going to go, oh, gee, we should have done something.
Oh, my God. I hope that doesn't happen. But I totally understand what you're saying because it just.
You're talking about 300 and some pound players out there playing in that kind of ridiculous heat. And
we've seen it with high school players.
Yes. It's not.
We've seen it. It's not something that's you and not even that, Robyn. It's something that you can prevent.
Yes. Rawr.
It's just simple as that. You got her over here growling. So it's serious, guys.
When I growl, that's bad.
That's bad.
My husband's probably in the other room going,
like, what the hell's going on? But I'll have to say, I'll piggyback. So my best game it's always a New England game, but I have to say Kansas City was one of them too. The worst game, I had to say Minnesota because I didn't understand what the heck we were doing there. And it's just like, you're sitting there like, all right, this is what we gotta do. You're just like, what? What just happened?
That was the one game that I actually went to. I was
Oh,
back.
that's right.
I was back in. I was back in
That's
Buffalo.
right.
Jack Eichel score a hat trick against the Sabres, and I got to see that wonderful Minnesota game. Oh man, the
Yeah.
trip to Buffalo. People asked me when I got back to Wyoming, they're like, "Man, that was a bad trip, wasn't it?" I said, "Oh no, it's never a bad trip when you get to eat in Buffalo."
Yeah. No, it was not a bad trip. It was a bad game. They had a bad game. I was fine.
I had a great time.
Right? Yeah.
They didn't. But as far as the game goes, Minnesota, I'm with you. That was a terrible.
It was terrible because they never should have been in that game. Minnesota should have never been in that game. We always do this though. The Buffalo Bills always play down to their competition. They should have never been that close. I'm sorry.
You're right. And because we're Buffalo Bills fans and because of our history, I can tell you, being an old fart, sitting in that stadium, I felt like I knew we were going to lose. That's a terrible feeling.
Oh yeah, you go into games like this doesn't feel right. What game was it? I think. Oh my God, my son had a football game, and I was on my way. I was driving. People were already at my house. Me and my son is in the car. We're driving back home, and the game was starting. I'm like, this game doesn't feel right. And I think it was a Miami game. I'm like, this game doesn't feel right. They're like, why? I said, I think we're gonna lose. But they don't say that. I'm like, I have a feeling, and I was right. I was right. Yeah. No, it was a Jets game. I'm sorry, it was a Jets game because Josh Allen threw that bomb to Stephon Diggs, but after that, it was over. It was a Jets game. So yeah. So I had a funny feeling about that. There you go. You're back now. So yeah. Whatever.
Sorry about that.
No, you're good.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, for now. Yeah, that was bad. That being in the stadium, that Minnesota game, it was bad. I had this feeling, and it was like a thing in my mind. I'm saying to myself, don't say this to yourself. You're a Bills fan, right? Because we do that.
Shake it off.
Shake it off, girl. I was with a friend of mine, and she's like looking at me, "Are you okay?" And I'm like, "Yeah." I just had this feeling.
Yeah.
That's here we go again kind of thing. And it was there. It was there, and I hated it. I just absolutely hated it. So yeah, that game sucked royally.
Yeah. Well, so with the Super Bowl coming up, do you have a favorite Super Bowl?
Of all time, my definite favorite would be the first Super Bowl that the Bills were in.
Oh, okay.
Whitney Houston singing, and it's crazy that that's my favorite, Super Bowl that we lost. But as far as a game goes, it has to be my favorite Super Bowl because we were in it all the way, in the tragic history afterwards and all of that. Even though there's negativity, and there was negativity from that game, the first one we lost. And then, of course, we lose again, and then we lose again, and then we lose again. And then you get to the point where it's like, oh, my God, I can't do this anymore. And on we go. So then we decide, Buffalo Bills, not to even make the playoffs for the first 17 years. And I'm like, okay, I'm ready. I'm ready. But I look back at, all of the Super Bowls, and of course I'm going to look at the Bills, as a favorite, one of them. And the first one has to be it.
Okay. Yeah, I have none of the Bills. I would have to say my favorite one would be the 49ers against the Ravens.
Oh.
That was a good one. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I just actually went back and watched that game, and I was like, man, that was a good game. That was a blackout game, remember?
Yes.
Yep.
Yes. And isn't it interesting that, that it turned out to be just so incredible? And that's what you hope for with the Super Bowl, right? You just want a good game.
And that's what we want this weekend, just a good game. I don't want a 7-3. I don't even want a high scoring game. I just want a competitive game. And I know these two teams will give it to us. but
I
I
think
just don't want
so.
it to be lopsided.
Yeah. You
You
don't
know,
like, yeah, a drubbing in the Super Bowl is never fun,
no,
especially if you're on the losing end, which we know all about. But uh,
right,
yeah, it stinks. But even as a fan, just watching, the Super Bowl as a person that doesn't have any skin in the game, so
right.
to speak, it's fun. You want same thing with me. I'm probably different than a lot of people. I don't mind a real defensive game.
Mm-hmm.
If it's, turnovers and, exciting stuff, that sort of thing. But yeah, give me a nice 27-24,
Yes.
right till the bitter end
Yeah.
uh, game, and I'd be happy. But I'd also be a liar if I didn't say that go Eagles. I
Hey, as Bills fans, we kind of have to align with that because sorry, I don't want to see Patrick Mahomes get another trophy. I'm sorry because they're talking about dynasty and this and the third, and I'm like, who's a dynasty? They're not a dynasty. I can get into
don't
that
know.
whole thing, and I don't want to. I'm not a fan. I think he's a great football player. I think he's top for sure. I'm just not a. I'm a fan of football, but I'm not a fan of Patrick Mahomes. Sorry, Pat. Just not a fan of you. We got Josh Allen over here, so
Yeah, we got our own superstar.
absolutely,
We'll get there.
absolutely, absolutely, we'll be there. The window is not closed for Bills fans that think it's closed. It's not closed. You got to do some shuffling around, but we got Josh Allen and we got Sean McDermott and Brandon Bean, and I'm pretty sure they're going to do everything they can to get some weapons for Josh. So,
And protection, please.
protection. Number one, protection first. For sure. But that's it. That's all I have, unless you have some more.
I just have one other thing that I
Oh,
wanted
that's
to
right.
bring up and talk about, and that has to do with the absolutely wonderful, stunning letter that Jesse Pagula published through the Players Tribune earlier this week, a couple days ago. And I just want to say outright, I'm thankful. I'm so thankful because it was such a difficult situation. There has been a long time since we've had any information about how Mrs. Pagula was doing.
Mm-hmm.
And I know the fan base was very concerned, and the media didn't give us any information because they didn't have any information. And I will say this, were so respectful
Yes.
of the privacy for the Pagulas. There was no hounding the Pagulas, during this time that I know of.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
I don't know what went on behind the scenes, but you didn't see our media, and I say our media, Western New
Right.
York media, um, doing what you would expect maybe the New York City media might do.
Mm-hmm.
They
Yeah.
tend to be a little more aggressive
Oh,
in
of course. Following him and all this other stuff. Yeah, it would have been aggressive
would
for sure.
it would have been different. And so we went for this very long period of time without any information about how Mrs. Pagula was doing, and all of us were, wondering, concerned, hopeful,
Mm-hmm.
praying for her if you pray. And then this letter came, and the letter was so I read it several times. The letter was so heartfelt.
Yeah.
You can tell that Jesse is going to be a leader in the family,
Yeah,
like
she said it too. Mm-hmm.
her mom.
Yeah.
It's like somebody had to step up, right? And we all know, because the Pagulas have shared this information in interviews many times, that Terry Pagula is not he's not a communicator. He's more of a guy that wants to, work in the background, and he's very happy to have somebody else do all that stuff. And I remember reading an interview from Mrs. Pagula about how they met and how they came together. And it was basically that, he needed someone to
He had a
help him.
wingman. He had a
Yeah,
wingman.
he needed a wing lady with it, for his oil company. And she was it. And I'm sure, and especially after reading Jesse's letter, it seems like that's the way, the Pagula family, that's the way it ran,
Mm,
right? And so Kim Pagula was the face of the Bills, the face of the Sabres, the president of both organizations.
right.
And she was very, very much involved. And so when this happened, it was a shock, because no longer, I mean, who did you see as the face of the Pagula, franchises in
Hmm.
Buffalo? And it was not very clear. That's fine, but nobody had any idea, what's going on behind the scenes.
Right.
So you just have to wait until the family is ready. And interestingly, in Jesse's letter, and this is what I found most interesting, it was when Damar Hamlin went down and had a cardiac arrest. And we now know that that's what happened to Mrs. Pagula,
Hmm.
that she had a cardiac arrest. That here's Jesse, 15 minutes from a, doubles match in Australia, freaking out because of this going on. And that was what, as she stated, that's kind of what catapulted her to feeling like, okay, I need to do this. I need to step forward. I need to do something. And so the something that she did was take the lead and write a letter in the Players Tribune.
Hmm.
And why that's so important, in my view, is she took command of the narrative.
Right.
She didn't allow anybody in the media, to have control over the information that was going to be dispersed. And more power to her for doing that, because she controlled what information was being conveyed. Next thing I want to mention very quickly is just something to fans regarding the information about Kim that was in Jesse's letter. We know she had a cardiac arrest. We know that when you are recovering from a cardiac arrest, your brain function depends on how fast with Damar Hamlin, and why his brain was completely functional because there was no time lapse.
Right.
And in Mrs. Pagula's case, we don't know, or whatever, that there could have, because how long was she having a cardiac arrest before, people were aware that it was happening?
Hmm.
Don't know all of that information. So, but as that has some impairment.
Oh, you blinked out there. Yeah, it was some impairment to her, and now she is having difficulty getting words to how she wants to express herself. Robyn had blinked out for a little bit. Hopefully, she gets back in here. But yeah, it's definitely a strain on the family, to say the least, because Kim Pakula was and is, sorry, she's the hierarchy when it comes to that family. And like her daughter said, she wants to know more and learn more. And hopefully, because she's still playing tennis, hopefully that would happen. Hopefully, in time, they will give her more responsibility because her daughter said she wanted. I don't know what happened to Robyn. Hopefully she comes back in. If not, we're just gonna call it here. But she had some interesting things to say. There she is. There she is. She is back now. She's back now.
I was talking about Kim Pagula. I'll just kind of
Yes.
go back to where I was at with
Okay.
Miss Pagula, and where her recovery is concerned. The issues that Jesse brought up are kind of important for fans to think about and be aware of, because one of the things that people are going to assume right now is, well, when is she going to be in the public? When is she coming out? When is she, what's next? We don't know
Hmm.
what's next. As Jesse pointed out, Mrs. Pagula's issues are continuing to improve. And so there's no complete understanding of where her recovery will go at this point. And thank goodness, you just have to thank goodness she's going to be getting the very best of care from the very best people that will help her maximize her potential. And the issue that Jessie said that I want people to be aware of is she said, Mrs. Pagula, I'll say Kim Pagula, is never going to be the same person that she was that we knew before.
Yeah.
So that's what
Yeah.
fans have to understand, that is a reality. Okay. Her recovery, we don't know what the end point's going to be, but we do know from what Jessie's saying, there's going to be some limitations in terms of, is she ever going to go back to being president of, the Sabres and the Bills? Probably not, from what I can see from what Jessie's saying. So I think as fans, we all have to take a step back now that we know. Okay, now we know what's going on with her. We all have to take a step back again and respect the Pagula's privacy in terms of what's next.
Absolutely.
And Jessie will tell us. Okay, Jessie obviously is taking the lead, and that does not surprise me one bit. As she wrote about, she has, excuse me, all the knows, but she has all of her life ahead of her. She's 28 years old. She's the number 4 tennis player in the world. So she's torn naturally, but she feels like her family needs her.
Right.
And she's the leader, she's the natural leader. You can see that. She's stepping right into being a lot like her mom.
No, their older sister, she's a younger sister, and they have a son too, right?
Yes. And they're young. Who knows where, things will be somewhere down the road. But right now, Jessie's stepping up.
No, for
Yo,
sure.
Jessie, I'm right there, giving you all the atta girls, because, you're stepping in and doing some really good things. And I love what she did by taking control of the narrative of what's going on. And so we all have to just be very patient about what's ahead.
For sure. For sure. And I'm just happy that, we kind of know we're not in mystery form anymore, because we're all, as a fan base, like, what is going on with Kim? We knew something was going on. We just didn't know what it was. And now we do. And now it's time to give grace to to their family, for sure.
And one more thing, just one more thing, we all have to think about John Murray too.
Oh, yes.
John Murphy. Oh. I'm sorry, John Murphy. My mind's all over the place.
No, you're good.
But John Murphy, how are you? It's the same thing. He's in my heart.
I'm
thinking,
because they haven't said anything too much about him either.
No. And again, it's one of those things that we'll know when we need to know. But just hold them in our hearts and hope for the best.
For sure, because he's the voice of the Buffalo Bills, And I don't get me wrong, I love Chris Brown. I love Brownie. I love Brownie. He's so animated. He's there. But when you think of the Buffalo Bills and you think of who's the voice, it's John Murphy. So yeah.
It is. And if it's if it's time for John to give up the microphone, I couldn't think of a better person to give it up to than Brownie.
Yeah.
I'll tell you what, I do. I love him. I love.
Yeah. I do too. I do too. Because he's a Bills fan. He's who we are. Like, that's who we are. And Chris Brown, that's who a Buffalo Bill fan is. That's why I love him. But that is the show, guys. We thank you for listening. This will drop always on a Friday. We tape on Thursdays, drops it on Friday. But thank you. Thank you, Robyn. Thank you. I appreciate it. Yes. So this is Tea Time with Robyn, episode 10. We love you guys. Thank you for listening. And always, go Bills. Go.